4. Democracy versus hot sex. Desire and egalitarianism don't play by the same rules. No bill of sexual rights can hold its own against the lawless, untamable landscape of the erotic imagination. Daphne Merkin. Several years ago, I attended a presentation at a national conference where the speaker discussed a couple who had come to therapy in part because of a sharp decline in their sexual activity. Previously, they had acted out fantasies of domination and submission. Now, following the birth of their second child, the wife wanted more conventional sex. But the husband was attached to their old style of lovemaking, so they were stuck. The presenter took the approach that resolving this couple's sexual difficulty was going to require working through the emotional dynamics of their marriage and their new status as parents. But in the discussion that followed, the audience proved far less interested in the couple's overall relationship than in the disconcerting presence of domination and submission in their erotic life. What pathology, several participants asked, might underlie the man's need to sexually objectify his wife and her desire for bondage in the first place? Perhaps, some people speculated, motherhood had restored her sense of dignity, so that now she refused to be so demeaned. Some suggested that the impasse reflected long-standing gender differences. Men tend to pursue separateness, power, and control, while women yearn for loving affiliation and connection. Still others were certain that couples like this needed more empathetic connection to counteract their tendency to engage in sex. Power bids become a plaything, an experiment, a way to temporarily experience relations we're loath to inhabit in real life. If in our daily life we shun dependence, in our erotic life we might welcome it. If it's our aggression that makes us twitch with discomfort, sexual enactments can permit a safe experience of power. Whether our real-life aversion is to submission, as it is for Elizabeth, or to autonomy, as it is for Jed, the sexual drama can offer catharsis. For years, S&M and DNS, domination and submission, were fringe behaviors that roamed on the outskirts of conventional sexuality. They were primarily a practice of gay men who tended to be more successful than heterosexuals at isolating sexual aggression for the purpose of pleasure, as the sociologist Anthony Giddens notes. In recent years, these marginal practices have moved into the mainstream. A growing number of citizens in the early 21st century, gay and straight, male and female, left and right, urban and suburban, get their sexual kicks from giving and taking orders. There are far too many of them to fit a minority psychological profile. The social critic Camille Paglia sees the rise in domination and submission as a collective fantasy that tweaks the rough spots of our egalitarian culture. It seems to me that rituals of domination and submission are a subversive way to put one over on a society that glorifies control, belittles dependency, and demands equality. In cultures where these values are at a premium, America, for example, we find more and more people seeking to give up control, revel in dependency, and recognize the very inequities no one wants to talk about. Seen in this light, sex clubs are havens of acceptance for what society rejects. This explicit exchange of power, which transfers freely and consensually from one party to another, is a far cry from the rigid distribution of power that pervades our society. In real life, power is much harder to negotiate and almost impossible either to acquire or to relinquish. No one wants to give up her piece of the pie. I am keenly aware of the disparities of power that pervade our society, and not a day goes by when I am not witness to the real fallout of intimate violence. But I also know that aggression, as a human emotion, cannot be purged from human interactions, especially not among those who love each other. Aggression is the shadow side of love. It is also an intrinsic component of sexuality, and it can never be entirely excised from sexual relationships. In my work with couples, I aim to uncover dynamics of power. I try to make them manifest, to examine the tensions, and to redress the inequities. I also look at the harmonious imbalances unique to each couple. Not all inequities are a source of trouble. Sometimes these form a couple's basis of harmony. I don't seek just to neutralize power. I also seek to harness it. Together, we look for ways to express it safely, creatively, fearlessly, and sexually.